today we're going to be speaking to several people with ERDC about riding the wave of research, a decade of coastal collaboration. This morning I have with me Jessie Straub. She's a research oceanographer. Mary Cialone, she's a research hydraulic engineer, both with ERDC's Coastal Hydraulics Laboratory, otherwise known as CHL. And then we have Dr. Nicole Elko. She's the executive director of the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Love having you on the show this morning, and we're going to dive deep into a lot of subject matter. But right now, we want to learn about you guys. So tell me about yourselves, your background, and your roles in your organization.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here. I'm Jessie Straub. As mentioned, I'm a research oceanographer with ERDC's Coastal Hydraulics Lab. I'm actually I sit at our local field research facility in Duck, North Carolina, where I'm actually also the current acting branch chief here. But for the U.S. Coastal Research Program, I am the program manager and managing director for the program. So I coordinate our program manager team and our USCRP staff, as well as to help to coordinate our USCRP leadership. And working directly with our current academic project researchers. We have over 30 current active projects, diverse projects from across universities across the country. But I do have expertise in kind of managing these complex projects and transitioning technology, as well as in coastal resilience and coordinating federal agency priorities and partnering with academics and non-government organizations.
That's a lot. Next.
Hi, this is Mary Cialone, and thank you for inviting us to speak with you today. So my background is in coastal processes, and I spent the majority of my 40 years with USACE in numerical modeling research and applications related to storm processes and impacts. I became involved with the USCRP around 2015 and eventually served as the managing director, which was the precursor to the program manager position that Jessie holds now. And I held that position of managing director until my retirement in 2022. So now I'm what's called a rehired annuitant at ERDC, and my role with USCRP is to assist Jessie in whatever capacity she needs a hand with.
Fantastic. Next.
Good morning. This is Nicole Elko. I am the executive director of the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association, ASBPA. I sit in Charleston, South Carolina, and at ASBPA, my role is to coordinate our over 1,000 members around the globe on shore and beach preservation advocacy. So we work a lot in Washington on topics such as coastal legislation and appropriations for beach renourishment projects, for beneficial use of dredge material, for coastal resilience projects in general for the coastal communities of the U.S. And we do all that from a foundation of science. So the research element of this program is critical for us at ASBPA because we make all of our policy recommendations from a science basis. So we call that science-based coastal advocacy. We have a very strong science arm of our organization, and I have served as the science director of our organization prior to my present role for about 10 years. I have a background in geology. I have a PhD in coastal geology. I've worked a lot with coastal communities around the U.S., particularly on the East and Gulf coasts, as well as on some state-level advocacy. So at the U.S. Coastal Research Program, I serve as one of the co-executive directors alongside Julie Rosati from the Army Corps, Brett Webb from the University of South Alabama, and Diane Foster from the University of New Hampshire. I'm one of the founding members of USCRP, and I helped to organize our initial meeting back in 2014 that sort of led to the formation of the program a couple of years later. Happy to be here. Thank you.
We are talking about the collaborative impact this season, and I want to remind everybody what the title of the show is today. It's Riding the Wave of Research, a decade of coastal collaboration. That being said, to kick things off, can you give us a quick overview of the U.S. Coastal Research Program and its main goals? Dr. Elko?
Well, I'll start off and then I'll turn it over to Jessie. The U.S. Coastal Research Program is a collaborative effort of federal agencies, stakeholders, and academia, all to strive for our goal of educating the next generation of coastal scientists and engineers through experiments and research projects that are funded by the program. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. I'll just highlight, too, that, the goal of the USCRP is really to build a community of practice, and we've actually built a community of practice of over 1,000 members from federal agencies, academic institutions, and non-government organizations, and really bringing together these groups to address societal needs along the coast. And so the collaboration of federal agencies, academics, and stakeholders really aims to identify particular research priorities, enhance funding opportunities, foster collaboration, as well as promote science translation.
Thank you, Jessie. So how is the USCRP funded? Jessie?
Yeah, so the U.S. Coastal Research Program is currently funded through a congressional ad that comes into the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In the past, we've actually had other federal agencies contributed funding for the program based on their missions and their needs for their particular organization. And we really hope to continue to grow this opportunity in the future with our federal agency partners. But the USCRP really receives funding as well as an associated congressional directive. And the specific needs for that are to address coastal research advancements and improving our understanding and ability to predict coastal processes. So the funding is really congressionally directed for academic research partners to address these prioritized gaps that we've identified in federal research, as well as to collaborate with federal researchers and helping to expand our research dollars.
Thank you, Jessie. The USCRP brings together federal agencies, as you say, academia, and various stakeholders. How do these collaborations help boost coastal research and make the science more accessible? Dr. Elko?
The research that USCRP funds is founded in stakeholder needs. So before the program puts out a request for proposals, the first thing we do is look to the communities and the federal agencies that we serve to ensure that the research we're funding will meet applied needs within the communities and within federal agencies. Some examples include direct impacts from storms that are persistent along our coastline, and the way that, we'll hear from mayors who have had their entire communities just covered in a layer of sand after a storm has inundated their community. And we're seeing this more and more. And the stories that we hear and the needs that they express are very much interwoven into the call for proposals, right? So that the research that we're creating really does assist the communities. A lot of times the academic proposers are required to have a community partner or a federal agency partner so that they're addressing something that maybe a federal agency has really been stuck on, a sediment transport model or an equation that's been holding them up, and they can utilize the collaboration with the academics to get them over that hump.
And so with $23.5 million in funded research since 2016, what are some standout projects that have come out of USCRP? Mary?
Oh, there are so many projects that I could mention that have contributed to our great success, but I'll just keep it to 3 or 4. Like those projects that improve our modeling capabilities, some by incorporating better physics into the models, and others by saving computational resources by reducing run times or improving model accuracy. So, for example, there was a 2019 project that gave us the ability to simulate a very large number of post-storm morphology predictions in less than an hour. Another big project that comes to mind is the During Nearshore Event Experiment, or DUNEX, which is a very large-scale collaborative community field experiment bringing together those academic and federal researchers from around the country to collect field data during storms. The goal was to better understand the physical processes that occur and the impacts to our coastal environment during these extreme events. So the experiment was conducted on the North Carolina coast by a multidisciplinary group of over 30 research scientists who deployed more than 300 instruments for that study. Other projects have worked directly with communities, such as a 2019 project focused on Dauphin Island, Alabama, where research on management strategies informed decision makers on different adaptation pathways related to storms and sea level rise. So the methods they implemented in that project have since been used in NOAA documentation. So this project stands out because of its impact, striving to improve coastal management practices. And finally, many of our projects have trained dozens of students as members of their research teams. For many of these students, especially the undergrads, this opportunity was their first research experience. One of our earliest projects even involved dozens of high school students getting hands-on experience aiding in data collection. And these students are the leaders of tomorrow, and to date, the USCRP has funded projects have supported nearly 300 students that are now more likely to enter the coastal workforce. So this, to me, is one of our greatest successes.
Fantastic. Isn't it fun to see these high school students get excited about something?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, we even want to go younger. I mean, the younger you start with students, getting them interested in the STEM research, the better we have a chance of having them think about coastal research as a career choice.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. So USCRP focuses on important areas like dunes, storm processes, and sediment transport. How do you decide which topics to prioritize, especially when it comes to helping coastal communities? Jessie?
Yeah, so the USCRP is really unique, and it's really this national coastal effort to really coordinate federal activities, strengthen academic programs, and also address coastal community needs. So as Nicole mentioned, the research is really rooted in stakeholder community needs and federal agency needs and gaps. And we really rely heavily on our federal agencies and stakeholder partners to let us know those research gaps and really to help us prioritize needs for coastal communities. So we do this regularly throughout the years, throughout the decade, through community workshops and visioning sessions, surveys, as well as guiding consensus community reports. We actually, this past June, just held a large collaborative workshop called the USCRP Decadal Visioning Workshop that really brought together our federal agency partners, stakeholders, and academia to help identify and prioritize key management challenges and some of these high priority science gaps that will help guide the next decade of coastal research. So we had over 120 attendees from different various federal agencies and non-governmental organizations and academic institutions. So it was a really successful opportunity to really be able to bring together what those needs are. And right now we're actually have a survey out to the community to help us really, after we've heard all this information, to prioritize those needs and how do we move forward as a community. And we'll be building a consensus document from the community to put back out that will really help us prioritize those needs of coastal communities.
Thank you, Jessie. So looking back over this first decade of the USCRP, what are some of the big achievements in terms of academic advancements, data collection, or tools that have been developed? Mary?
I think my response to this question would be similar to what I mentioned before about our greatest successes. But if I put it in terms of raw numbers, I'd say that for academic advancements, we have supported 224 academic researchers from 82 universities. And like I said, nearly 300 students working with those researchers. Also, in terms of academic advancements, our program has supported 97 PhDs towards fulfilling their degree requirements, and 42 of them have graduated so far.
Did you say 97? I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you say 97?
97 PhDs we've supported them to some extent, not fully.
Oh, okay.
But we've supported them towards their degrees, right? And 42 of them have graduated so far, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and we've also supported 79 master's students, 63 of which have graduated so far.
Wow.
So if you look at those numbers, there's also undergrads, because I said it was close to 300 we've supported. So undergrads, and then I had mentioned high school students as well.
Right. Those numbers are fantastic.
Yeah, so these these academic advancements in terms of research include many other the things you mentioned in your question, like data collection from individual projects to these large-scale field experiments like DUNEX that I mentioned before. And similar to that large-scale field experiment, we're presently gearing up to conduct a collaborative laboratory experiment focused on sediment transport processes that we're calling SEDCO Lab. In this case, we have brought together 5 teams of academic researchers who will conduct experiments at USA's ERDC laboratory basins and flumes And those teams have already designed their experiments, and they've visited ERDC facilities to meet our researchers and coordinate their plans. And those full experiments will occur in 2025. We've also had academic advancements, including, like I mentioned before, numerical model enhancements to improve our model accuracy and efficiency. We've also done tool development, like you mentioned in your question, like the iFlood, which is a citizen science flood reporting application. And the goal of this app is to increase community awareness of coastal flooding hazards and inform local town managers about the processes contributing to flooding in their communities. Other projects focus on or include instrumentation development in their research projects, like one project that developed an instrument to identify the presence of microplastics in the water, another that developed a low-cost wave and surge sensor. So as you can see, our academic advancements cover a wide range of topics.
So how does USCRP bring in non-federal players like local governments, NGOs, and businesses into research work? Dr. Elko?
Thanks. The stakeholder, as we call them, what you just described, we refer to them as our stakeholders. So our stakeholder engagement plan involves engaging directly with the people on the ground, practitioners of coastal management projects, right? And we aim to connect with them in a variety of ways, virtually, in person, surveys, workshops. But we're always asking the same question, and that is, what's keeping you up at night, right? What is the thing in your community now that has got you to a point where you don't have a solution, right? And
right.
that's the kind of challenge that we really want to address here. It's finding that intersection between a scientific challenge and a societal need. So working with whether they're nonprofit organizations educating people along the coast, whether they're emergency managers at a coastal county, right, or our federal agency partners, everybody is trying to solve a challenge. A lot of times it's related to climate change and just these new conditions that we're experiencing along the coastlines. Some of our communities are looking to adapt in ways that we've never considered before, right? Relocating houses, elevating houses, changing rules about where you can and cannot build. And they need help. These are the things that are keeping them up at night. So that's where USCRP aims to interject and engage and fund some research that can move the needle.
So important. Thank you. So one goal of USCRP is to help build a skilled coastal workforce. Can you tell us about the opportunities available for students and early career researchers? Mary?
Sure. As I mentioned before, our USCRP-funded researchers have included nearly 300 students in their projects, and those students are automatically members of USCRP and are invited to our monthly meetings, where they learn about ongoing research as well as hear about upcoming coastal research events. They're given opportunities to present at those monthly meetings if their senior research will put them forward to do that. And they're also given opportunities to speak at USCRP special sessions at conferences. Our USCRP researchers include students in the DUNEX fieldwork that I mentioned before. And also they'll be included in the SEDCO lab experiment. So this month, we're also sponsoring a SEDCO Lab Student Week with 26 students from around the country coming to ERDC to learn about physical modeling, to meet federal researchers, and to explore career development opportunities. But getting down to the metrics, we are tracking our advancements in this area of building a skilled coastal workforce by surveying our students. So about 100 students took our survey, and from that we see that among students that have not graduated yet, there is a strong desire to enter the coastal workforce post-graduation. From the survey, we also learned that nearly half of the students supported had their first coastal research experience as a result of this USCRP project, and a third had never engaged in coastal community and stakeholder engagement prior to working with USCRP project teams. So these first-time experiences can set students on the path to a coastal career. Not only this, but from the survey, 84% of the students agreed with the statement that their experience working on a USCRP-funded research team positively affected their decision to pursue or want to pursue a career in the coastal sector. That's huge.
Right.
And so, so the USCRP is really laying the groundwork for students to enter the coastal workforce by giving them these positive research experiences to guide or at least consider towards their career path, giving them opportunities to work with potential federal or non-federal employers, and giving them skills and confidence to join that workforce. And so far we've seen a high desire to enter that workforce. So we're looking at those students that were supported in the first 5 years of our program, and about half of them have gone on to enter the coastal workforce. And so the last thing I want to mention is that we have a journal paper coming out in 2025 that quantifies how the USCRP has impacted students regarding the opportunities provided and how that translates to the coastal workforce.
Thank you, Mary. So important to our young people to be able to do that. And you guys, this is just such great information. I appreciate it. So how have findings from USCRP funded research been applied in real world situations to support coastal resilience and management? Jessie?
Yeah, this is a very timely question here. As this past year, we've actually been working with our USCRP fellow, Bianca Charbonneau, who has been working through a comprehensive database and developing a database of all of our projects that really shows and quantifies the program's impacts and outcomes and how projects have been applied in real-world situations. So I think I have some pretty good examples here that are pretty exciting to think about. The first one Mary mentioned previously, which was actually a project with the University of South Alabama, where adaptation pathways methodology was used to explore management options. And this was actually used by NOAA federal documentation as part of the project. And the research team created an adaptation pathway document that really simulated and evaluated future storm events for the community, as well as potential protection scenarios relative to sea level rise. And this was specifically for Dolphin Island, Alabama. But so this is an interesting example that federal agencies have actually used this information to help in community planning in particular areas. Another example project of projects that support coastal resilience and management is a project at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington that included building these weather stations in areas in North Carolina. And these weather stations are still active and really an invaluable public resource for the areas beyond their, monitoring winds, waves, and tides. And this resource has been voiced as really invaluable for coastal managers, specifically for local towns and site managers in the National Estuarine Research Reserve. So those are kind of two examples of interesting projects that really support coastal resilience and management in real-world situations. Other examples are, there's been lots of instances of collaborations with communities where the researchers really create some type of hydrodynamic model for a specific location that can then continue to be used by the community into the future. So one specific example is with NC State, where working with federal researchers, the team actually developed a model for Hatteras Island in North Carolina relative to Hurricane Isabel flooding and inlet breaching scenarios. And this is really important for the flood risk management of that area. Mm-hmm. I just want to mention that citizen science efforts as well have really been growing in the coastal science field. And Mary had mentioned a project with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute to develop a citizen science flood app, reporting app called iFlood. It really has publicly available data that's really been an invaluable resource across the country to understand and track some of these sporadic flooding events. Mm-hmm. And then similarly, with our partners at the University of California in San Diego, a citizen science app called Rip Finder, which is a mobile rip current detection app, has been developed through USCRP projects, which is currently in use by lifeguards and the public to help make them safer by really engaging users as citizen scientists to share the information about detecting rip currents, which can be used to help really inform the existing NOAA rip current forecast model and improve that model and make it safer. So those are some interesting opportunities of situations where projects have supported coastal resilience and management in these real-world applications.
Fantastic. Great. I mean, that's just wonderful. So these next two questions are also for you, Jessie. So the USCRP collaborates with other major federal agencies like USACE, NOAA, and USGS. So how do these partnerships strengthen the coastal research efforts?
Yeah, so the USCRP, as we mentioned, I think this is a theme here, is really rooted in collaboration. And we collaborate with our federal agency partners through our federal agency research team, which has over 8 federal agency members that are current active members that we meet regularly with and that we have surveys and workshops with. So we work with our federal agency partners in identifying these research priorities by hosting these large workshops and visioning sessions, as well as interagency coordination meetings and scoping sessions. And it is really powerful bringing together these multiple federal agencies, because when you think about it, they have complementary coastal missions, and this can really increase efficiency of our work, decrease duplication of efforts, and we can help leverage funding opportunities and resources. And so I want to highlight, the impact of really sharing resources across federal agencies, such as the Coastal Hydraulics Lab Field Research Facility, which has been invaluable, for example, for the DUNEX experiment. And so having federal agencies be able to come to a federal research facility and be able to use that data and have it be available for their research is a really valuable opportunity. And we're really looking for more opportunities to leverage resources across agencies to get after these tough questions and problems for coastal communities in the future.
Well, so Jessie, the USCRP has funded 78 projects across 7 rounds of funding. What key lessons have you learned in addressing both extreme events and long-term coastal processes?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you look at the projects that have been funded, about 32% of the projects have addressed priorities in extreme events, and about 40% of those have addressed priorities in long-term coastal processes, and the 27% have addressed our priorities in human and ecosystem health. So when looking at extreme events specifically, the nearshore community identified 3 priority research areas of extreme events, long-term coastal processes, and human ecosystem health in the 2014 Nearshore Processes Report. And extreme events, processes, and impacts was a large part of that need in that report. And so as Mary mentioned, DUNEX earlier was really a large collaborative effort to address this need to understand and predict storm processes and impacts, estimate numerical modeling accuracy for storm processes, and identify some of these sources of error for storm processes as well. So some of the things that we've learned so far through the extreme events area is that, we've been able to understand and categorize storm characteristics and improve model capabilities. So thinking about a more holistic model approach for event-driven storms. Fundamental and applied research in groundwater and compound flooding have been impact areas that have really grown over the past decade, as well as identifying critical infrastructure relative to storm impact and response has been a large understanding that has come out, and things that we have learned from extreme events, and kind of filling these fundamental research gaps on habitats and storm erosion as relative to different types of areas along the coast. And then in looking at long-term coastal processes, we're filling fundamental research gaps on understanding geomorphic evolution, understanding applied research and sediment transport as well as availability, looking at different types of wave dynamics, natural processes and social perceptions and management, as well as improved rapid response tools and compound flooding driven models as well. So those are some of the examples of some of the key lessons and things that we've learned in addressing extreme events and long-term coastal processes.
So, Dr. Elko, this question is for you. What role do programs like state sea grants and other regional partners play in USCRP, and how do they help in identifying research needs?
State sea grants are one of our biggest partners, in particular on a recent call for proposals that USCRP worked with the National Sea Grant Office to directly engage proposals from the state sea grants in collaboration with their academic and stakeholder partners. So anyone that is in a coastal state has probably heard of their state sea grant office because they have expertise in community collaborations, in engagement. They are on the ground working with teams that do exactly what the USCRP aims to do. Now, I'm the executive director of a national organization. USCRP is a national group, and it's sometimes hard for federal agencies and national groups like us to really get down to that level of granularity and understand what the needs are on the ground in coastal communities. That's where partners like the state sea grants come in to really help us and lift us up. For example, here in South Carolina, where I am based, our state sea grant is working with local communities on coastal flooding challenges. They're working to install some of the sensor technology that Jessie was describing that has been developed through our research projects, and give the communities, empower them to have real-time water level data, coming through these apps on their cell phones like we described, that they just never had access to before. So not only these on-the-ground connections, that project also reminds us that the Sea Grants often have connections to underserved coastal communities. Again, that's a hard area for us to tap into at the federal and national scale. So the partnerships there have been invaluable.
Thank you, Dr. Elko. And so this last question, and we're going to wrap up with this last question, is for everyone. So to wrap up, what's the key takeaway you'd like our listeners to have from this conversation?
Yeah, so I think really I would hope that listeners took away that collaboration is really the core of the USCRP. And in really thinking about the complexity of our coastal system and the future climate change, that really requires a shared effort. And there's extreme value and impact in the community coming together and agreeing to a common set of priorities and an ambitious plan, such as the U.S. Coastal Research Program, which is really vital to improve resilience for our coastal communities into the future. We really do accomplish so much more when we work together, and that's what really continues to motivate me and excite me in working with the U.S. Coastal Research Program.
Perfect. Mary?
Yeah, that was great, Jessie. I would just add that the USCRP is really a forward-looking organization that we aim to address potential future coastal issues like Jessie just mentioned, like sea level rise. And we're doing that by doing the research now. We're not waiting. We're building our coastal workforce now. We're looking to get more students involved, and by actively engaging coastal communities in the solution process. So as she said, it's a collaborative thing. We have the coastal communities, we have our academic, and we have our federal teams all working together for a common goal.
And showing that it can happen. So
Absolutely.
Dr. Elko?
Yeah, my key takeaway is to continue to pursue this relentless engagement that we've talked about today. And that's really been the key to our success when we bring together stakeholders. And one stakeholder that I think we've alluded to but haven't really mentioned is private industry. That we've engaged quite a bit with private industry as well, who a lot of times have their finger on the pulse of regional coastal challenges, right? Maybe they have clients across the Southeast and they can say, wow, we're really seeing a consistent challenge presenting itself here. So you get the students that are being trained together, they're at a conference, they're presenting this amazing work. They're getting to share it with our federal agency partners who maybe they've advanced their models, right? And then the industry is there as well, listening in and hiring them. That cycle of accomplishing all these goals and putting those three parts of the program together is where the magic happens.
Fantastic. Perfect.